And we've got Kgobati Magome, who is also a coach. So the two of them, really great match. I know we're going to have a really exciting session. Kgobati, over to you.
Well, thank you, Jean. Thank you so much, and welcome everyone. As introduced, my name is Kgobati Magome. I'm managing partner at CI Coaching, where we help leaders to be more effective today and more fit for the future in their leadership. So just some housekeeping as we begin. You are all on mute, and that is all in service of you, so that you don't have any sounds. You can fully concentrate on what our wonderful presenter is going to be sharing today. If you need, we expect that there will be lots of questions and interactions. And so at the bottom of your screen, you will see there's a chat box and also a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Please, as the presentation goes, put your chats, your questions out there. There will be time where we will take them. Okay, so now about our presenter for today, Jess Mbanjwa. She is a Mindfulness Dialogue Lead. She works with some of the top companies across the globe, helping their leaders to lead more mindfully. She lives by the mantra, these are the beautiful days of our lives. And so, Jess, I can't wait to hear from you on this very important topic, how we rethink these crisis days into the beautiful days of our lives. Over to you. Was I on mute all this time? Hello, guys.
We could hear you. We could hear you. Jazz, you're still on mute.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just trying to get to slide 1. Sorry, I'm trying to get to my homepage. There we go. Sorry. Welcome to our mindfulness webinar today. It is indeed an unusual time. We are feeling hopelessness, uninspired, isolated, a sense of uncertainty, volatile markets, and unstable economies. We are living in an era which is very complex in our health system, with no cure yet for our COVID-19 virus, which has shaken the world, leaving us with bottled emotions and untwisted faulty thinking in our minds, and some tangled and troubled relationships in our families, our workplaces, business engagements, and in societies. In this session, I introduce mindfulness as a tool to help us sustain and survive the global lockdown positivity. I chose these words carefully of lockdown positivity. And as I go through my presentation, I will unpack them for you. In these uncertain times, mindfulness focuses on the ongoing process of self-development, in which individuals are able to appraise, to survive, the complexity and the multiplicity of the self by integrating a lifestyle focusing on the core strengths. Now, the core strengths in eras like these have to come to the fore. We all need to dig in very deep to find that one or two strengths that will keep us going to endure these times. I now invite you authentically to please acknowledge your own vulnerabilities, risks that are surrounding you, using mindfulness and positive resources to develop a resilient and a flourishing self. Mindfulness as a practice is being fully aware and maintaining a non-judgmental state of mind, a very complete awareness of your thoughts, of your emotions, whether they're negative or positive, of your experiences moment by moment. And during mindfulness, We monitor how we breathe when we feel certain emotions and create a sense of awareness, self-regulation, and self-motivation. These techniques help us become more stronger in times like these, more wiser, faster, and have a solutionist thinking approach during times where we face difficulties and unpredictable circumstances like the lockdown positivity. This moves me to my next slide, which talks about humans. I believe that humans are the smartest people on earth. But under lockdown situations where we find ourselves in, we need to cooperate and help one another. We need to recognize ourselves in others and our potential to be able to care for each other, to show more compassion, and to show that strength which brings that heroism and love within us. So strengths focus is something that I talk about a lot, and I really love to encourage people to say, instead of focusing on your weaknesses, dig very deep on your own strengths. Focus on your strengths to thrive during difficult times. Try and combat negative emotions and shine your positive self. Turn the situations around your home environment, your family environment, your workplace environment to be more bearable so that you can be able to live a more harmonious life. This also brings me to my favorite slide that talks about social connectedness. In times like these, we really have to, like I said, dig deep. And social connectedness is a concept whereby we as human beings want to have a sense of belonging. The way we are wired, the way we are made, we want to belong somewhere. We want people to look us in the eye and tell us how great we are. And we want that recognition to say, I see you, you see me. And people want to be seen as that in the social connectedness space. And also social connectedness is a very strong predictor of a better health for human beings, better vitality, longevity. That sense of belonging is what makes us thrive, even in lockdown situations where we want assurance that all is well or all will be well. And again, when I talk about social connectedness, in social connectedness, when our happiness levels increase in our home environments, in our workplaces, in our society, in our churches, naturally the level of happiness for yourself rubs off to the next person or to the people around you, which in turn builds trust, it builds a stronger network, it fosters more closer relationships, and it builds a resilient person, a resilient competency in the human being. And like I've said before, human beings, we are species where we are wired to connect. So for example, myself being at home on lockdown, and I think today is day 28, I'm already feeling like I just want to get into my car and go get a cup of coffee. I just want to get into my car and go and meet a friend. I just want to get into my car and go to the gym. But with all those lockdown regulations that our president have announced in the country, we can't freely do that because we have to protect ourselves, protect those around us, and we have to abide. So moving now to my favorite slide, which talks about social capital. Let's talk about social capital in the context of building teams or being one, or that sense of belonging in our societies. Currently, we are facing difficult times emotionally, financially, spiritually, and I chose to link social capital with the lockdown to emphasize specific benefits that flow from trusting the people around us, especially when we experience negative thoughts. that could lead to something called a downward spiral. So we have something in psychology that talks about a downward spiral and an upward spiral. Look around, take a moment and look around you, your family, your friends, your colleagues, churches, your therapists, your confidants, your children, your siblings, and our caregivers. And obviously some of this work we do through Zoom and we do through Microsoft Teams because we can't physically meet. How can we use social capital to contribute to high performance individuals during this time? And I'm going to spend a moment just to invite all of us, including myself, to spend half a minute of thinking, what are your core strengths? What strengths can you use and really dig deep in times like these, where things are harder, things are uncertain, things are volatile, things are very ambiguous. We don't know what the future holds. And I know within all of us, I mean, I've listed some of the top character strengths according to scientific research: leadership, communication, task enabling, gratitude, showing kindness. And I think it's very important, and I'm going to make an example about myself, that my top strength when I look at the list for me is appreciation of beauty. Hence, I live by the mantra that says these are the beautiful days of our lives. So what keeps me going, even as a mindfulness dialogue lead and as a coach who's certified in that space, I've got very bad days. I've got very down days during this time. And I pick up myself by having a cup of coffee, walking around the garden, appreciating the beauty around me, appreciating the grass around me. I can't go to James, so I run around my house. And I know it sounds bizarre, but I run so many times around my house and I actually talk to the leaves. I greet the leaves. I look at the trees. I look at the flowers. I look at the blooming. I look at the autumn leaves that are falling. And I'm saying, when would I have this opportunity to experience all this if it wasn't for the lockdown? This is why I call it a lockdown positivity. So I'm hoping that everybody has had a share to look at that slide and just identified one or two strengths that talk to them and something that they could practice on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, on a weekly basis to really bring the best out of them under the circumstances that we find ourselves in. Okay. And I'm going to pause on that slide and hand over to my beautiful
leader. So there are some questions. There's a question that has just come in. Jess, thank you so much for that. And the question we have is, at the moment when this person is saying, how can you help me if I'm not able to see my strength readily from the list that's there? What sort of tips are there that could help me even more to find more of my own strengths? What's your experience in that, Jess?
Thank you so much for the question. I love the question because it actually applies to me as well as a mindfulness dialogue. The first thing that happens when somebody says, what are your strengths? I interview a lot of people through my human resources background. It is very difficult to pinpoint at the top of your head what your strengths are. However, there's a way of working around it, especially when you're in a depressed mode or when you feel isolated or you have a lot of anxiety or your negative emotions are down or you're actually on a downward spiral for whatever circumstances that are facing you. Strengths are not rocket science. So if I remember well, I think there's 24 top character strengths according to the professors across the world. And I've just listed 10 here. So for you to find that strength in you that you actually cannot identify, you spend a lot of time trying to first understand the self. What kind of person are you? What do you like? What don't you like? What makes you tick? What makes you what brings the best in you? What brings the worst in you? And once you start digging deep into the self, which I always talk about to say, you know, it starts inside out. If you don't understand the jazz or the Kgobati or the gene, how do you understand the next other? And how do you then understand the world? So I invite the person to reach out to me to make them understand how they can dig to find their strength. But I'm also giving them homework to say, go and listen to your thoughts. Go and listen to your mind. Go and listen to your body. Take a walk. Cook if you need to cook. Whatever therapy makes you dig in deeper within that meditation space or prayer space of yourself spiritually, you are bound to find one thing that nobody else has, and it's unique to you as a strength. And I hope I've answered the question.
Yes, certainly. I think that we will get some more on that. And the other question that's here is about how is it that somebody gets to connect a lot more with themselves? What are some of the tips around connecting with self?
A beautiful question. And you know, I love these questions because I used to ask them a lot to myself before I got into a space that I'm in now. So a connection with yourself is, first of all, for me, those very silent moments on your own with yourself, in quiet environments, in tranquil environments, a space where there is dead silence. And the way I'm going to position it's that feeling of actually facing yourself, facing the jazz, facing your fears, facing your successes, facing your failures, and not being able to get out of the corner before you can actually be authentic with yourself. So I would say those connection moments with yourself require absolute silence. In mindfulness tools, we call it meditation. And when you meditate, there's a certain way that you stand. There's a certain way that your posture must be. There's a certain way that you remove the noise from your life, moment by moment. You listen to your breathing technique. I was so shocked to understand when I was doing my mindfulness course with my professors that as human beings, we are breathing every second of the day. And that's something that I had never paid attention to. So that momentary breathing in and out is absolute most, because the minute you start breathing in a certain way, then you know all is not well. The minute you start breathing in a certain way sometimes, then you know you're feeling very relaxed. You're feeling very calm. And some people connect through music. I mean, one of my therapies is to get into my kitchen and cook and connect very deeply with myself while I'm trying to make my pots. Other people go lie down on the beach. Other people go to church, but absolute silence within yourself at a deeper level. And I just want to make a quick example to say, one of the things that can help you to also connect with yourself is that, you know, you could be walking in the street or driving in your car, and you actually could be meditating and talking to yourself. And I call that, in my world, conversations with yourself. Have authentic conversations with yourself and face the fears and face the failures and deal your successes and go deeper within you to be able to come out and face the things that are bothering you. And just the last one to expand on that question is that, you know, there's something called forgiveness. It's a very difficult thing. And I've been through the journey and I know it's it's extremely difficult. I had to spend silence moments with myself to forgive certain things about myself. And just to throw in something there, one of them is weight. I've tried so hard, but there's a point where I had to say, I'm forgiving myself. This is my weight. I might not be happy with it, but I'm going to do something to fight it until the last moment, because it's something that bothers me every single day. So I hope I've answered the question from diverse angles, but it really needs you to face those fears or face those big things that you think you can conquer. And trust me, moment by moment, you get to a closer place where you are feeling much better.
Well, thank you, Jess. There's more questions, but I think it's let's continue with the presentation, and then we will pause again to take more questions. So thank you for that.
Okay. And I'm now going to talk about something which is also very close to my heart. As you can see, the picture of the beautiful lady with the jump, playing tennis. And I think that says it all in the picture. I mean, the strength that you can see there is absolutely wonderful, from her posture, from her body image, from her technique. I mean, I'm not going to expand into it, but I just want to invite listeners to just, again, look into the strength approach and our daily practices of what we really, really can do to make life easy in terms of our strength approach. So using our strength spotting approach as a fundamental skill. So there's something called strength spotting. When you talk about strength spotting, you actually pause in a workplace environment or family setup. You tell the person of how good they are in what they do. The amount of upliftment that can do to that person of being told how good they are by spotting that strength is humongous. I mean, I can't put a price into it. So let's practice a lot of spotting the strengths within the people or within ourselves or within our communities. And the outcome of strengths approach is to keep others around us highly motivated and increase their levels of happiness. Now, the lockdown positivity theme has two pillars in my world. I'm calling the lockdown positivity to rethink our thinking. There's a lot of thinking we have to do during a time like this, where we find ourselves. I think in the history, I have never been locked down for 28 days in my life. I think even maternity leave, you do have some time to just go out to get some stuff, but it just feels like a never-ending maternity leave. But we are where we are, and we have to embrace it because this is the situation that we find ourselves in. And I think I'm going to invite a lot of us during this time of lockdown positivity to rethink our thinking in terms of our business strategies, how we're going to do things differently going forward, how we're going to re-engineer our businesses as women business owners, how we're going to rest, use this time to rest, use this time to reflect, use this time to re-engineer, use this time to regroup, and maybe use this time to rewind and see what was the lifestyle like before the lockdown, and what can we correct that we did in the past, now in the present, and craft a suitable and a sustainable future for ourselves at an individual level, family level, economic level, and a societal level. So rethinking is something that I think all of us, if you haven't done it, I invite you to do it as soon as possible. Take your pen and paper, write your new lifestyle, because things will never be the same again. Things will never be like we used to do. We can never travel like we used to travel at a drop of a hat. We can never just go to church and just sit in a pew and praise and worship like we used to do in an environment where there's a lot of people. And schools, I mean, homeschooling, we've seen. We can never now just send our children to school and it's business as usual. Things are going to change slightly with online distant learning and doing things in a very mindful manner to change the way that we've done things. Obviously, that talks to reframing our mindsets as well.
Yeah, Jess, I want to come in there. There's some questions for you on strength spotting that I think would be useful to answer now while we're talking about strength spotting. The first is, how important is it to keep telling or uplifting my staff who are working from home on their strengths and uplifting them? That's a question that we have now.
Okay. So as I've mentioned, strength spotting is the single most important skill to keep others motivated and happy around you. Now, with the virtual teams, Microsoft Teams, the Zoom links, and connecting from wherever people are, it is such a lost opportunity for us as leaders if we actually really had to wait for the lockdown to spot strengths for the people around us. But having said that, it's never too late. When you as a leader connect with your teams, say on a weekly or a daily basis, it is still the most critical time to spot strengths within teams. And I will make an example. In your team, if you've got someone who's highly analytical, or someone who is a business analyst, or someone who writes really well, or someone who's behind the scenes in the back end trying to fix things, or someone who's more client-facing, this is the time where, as a team, and we are connecting from wherever we are connecting, to use those skills to say, Kgobati, we know your strength. We've spotted it already. It's being analytical. Please help us analyze the data. So and so, we know your skill is client-facing. Obviously, you can't face your clients face-to-face, literally. But we are going to deploy you to be the person who's going to make sure that our customers and our clients are happy. Do that phone call, and we are dedicating that to you. And then once a week, or when you consolidate all the strength spotting within the teams, you find that you've got the most wonderful team, because everybody is focusing less on what they can't do good, and they're focusing more of what they can do better. And that's how teams flourish within the workplace. I hope I've answered that.
Okay. Yes, you have. So let's continue. The other ones will catch. We'll share them later. You can go ahead.
Okay. So I've spoken about reframing our mindsets, reassessing our norms and values. There's something quite interesting which I love, which is called habit hacking. Habit hacking is that very bad habit that you do, and you reflect within yourself what it is. And I know what mine is. Mine is, I do not like listening to people who want to get from point A to C, but to first go from point A to Z and then come back to C. So my listening capabilities, I've had to do a lot of work in terms of hacking that habit, so that I look interested, even if somebody is saying something that I don't agree with. So some of these examples, we need to reassess our norms, our values, get rid of our old habits, and have a new outlook towards life. I've spoken about a cultivation of a sense of belonging. There is no better way than now for us to feel that we belong somewhere, from a family perspective. And I think when I really think and I reflect and I meditate and I pray in this point, the people who've been affected by COVID-19 at the moment, and maybe they don't feel a sense of belonging because they're in isolation for 14 days or 21 days or whatever the number is. Those are the kinds of things that, when I say positivity or lockdown positivity, we really need to dig deep. So even that person lying down in a hospital in isolation, who can't be seen by the family, who can't be visited by the family, or is in that ventilator, still needs a sense of belonging. So these things, we might just take them for granted, but let's cultivate a culture of sense of belonging and a sense of oneness and a sense of looking people in the eye and saying, I see you, you see me. I'm not going to talk about strengths. I think I've talked enough about that to build a sense of trust and a sense of safety, especially for our children and our caregivers and everybody else around us. And most importantly, reframing our mindsets around embracing diversity. You know, we are a culture of not so big or positive in embracing diversity and participating in society. And I think the lockdown had to come, and maybe the lockdown had to say, just pause a little bit. Are you chasing more the economy, or are you looking after your people? Are you looking after your employees? Are you looking after your family? What's the point of rushing and chasing the race because you want to make more money, but the people around you are suffering? So I invite all of us to become part of a solution through become real citizens to show that citizenship power and be very proactive in our approach in doing things during the lockdown positivity era. And I'm going to now talk about benefits of high quality connections. Now, high quality connections is a serious one. These high quality connections can increase our vitality. They can increase our longevity. They can increase our mutuality. They can increase our positivity. And again, through mindfulness, we all aspire to have that vitality life, that longevity life, that mutual and positivity engagement. And again, we become more agile, more flexible, more positive in enabling our mindful engagement with other people. And high quality connections, they facilitate better communication with our people in the workplace, at home, better collaboration efforts by bringing all those strengths that I've spoken about to bring stronger teams. Commitment is a big part of it as well, to be committed in the task that you are given to do. A lot of coordination. You asked the question about how do you spot those strengths when people are working virtually. Coordination of virtual teams to come together so that we're able to recognize people's efforts positively and to build a mindful and a positive organizational commitment, loyalty within our employees, and to enhance and facilitate individual and project overall team performances, even though we don't have to be in the offices physically.
Just on that one, Jess,
Yep.
on high quality connections and habit hacking, there's a question from a colleague who says, I am my worst enemy and critic. And this often gives me anxiety and reduces my productivity. And so the question is, what strategies are you able to give me to help hack some of the habits I have of criticizing myself and being my own enemy in that sense?
So criticizing yourself can be good or can be bad, depending on the context, depending how far you stretch the criticism within yourself. And I'm going to reframe it a little bit to try and answer it holistically, to say a lot of us fear failure because we were taught or we're wired to say we have to be successful. Now, the biggest thing in mindfulness scientifically is that in your daily activities or your tasks enablement, you have to fail in something to be able to learn, see your mistakes, and move to the next level. If we are painting a picture of saying we are successful, we are great, we have vitality, we have this longevity, we don't want criticism, we don't want destructive comments from other people, then we are living a lie. And I think during the times of lockdown, where we are now, there's a lot of criticism. And I think there's a lot of things that are out of our comfort zones. And I would say, when I answer that question, to try and zoom in, there's nothing wrong to being your worst enemy, to criticize yourself, but everything in moderation, so that you don't fall into a slump of a downward spiral and you start getting into depression and anxiety. So criticize yourself, look yourself in the mirror and say, Jazz, I don't think you did well in this aspect, but I think you did fantastic in this other aspect, using your strengths approach again. And then whatever criticism you've given to yourself, not harshly, learn from it, use it as a learning experience. And whatever habit that it is that you know is a bad habit, whatever it is, use a habit hacking technique to deal the habit, to look the habit in the eye, to face the habit, and to be very aware when the habit kicks in. And like I made an example to say, sometimes I'm not the best listener. And when I listen to people who are talking and I'm bored, my facial gesture says it all. But I've had to learn to stop the distractions, leave my phone when I'm bored and put it away, stop the drawing that I do, because I start doing artistic stuff when somebody's in front of me and talking. So you learn to forgive yourself. You learn to know that I can't do this because I know where it's going to lead me. And you don't want to go too deep into it. So to answer your question, everything in moderation. Do criticize yourself. Do acknowledge your failures, but don't go too extreme that you can't come back from the downward spiral, so that you can dial in the upward spiral in you to use your strengths to be a better person. So we learn, we keep learning, actually. That's just how it is. We just keep learning from the failures.
Okay. So thank you for that brilliant answer, Jess. Another question is about social connectedness. So part of what you said in the presentation is that our social connectedness helps us to be more vital and actually just live a much more fulfilled life. So the question is, what are some of the tricks that we can mindfully connect socially so that it actually contributes to this high quality connectedness that you've just spoken about?
So human beings are wired to connect. We are people who are wired to connect. We are not people who are supposed to be under lockdown and being told that we can't do this, we can't do that. Let's start there. So social connectedness is something that also we have to teach ourselves. We have to create awareness of ourselves to say, I might be at home with my family. I might be in a position where I can't do the normal things that I can do, but I can have some tools around me that I can use to keep in touch to the social world. For example, there's festivals that are happening on televisions. I saw the Global Citizen happening. There was Andrea singing the other day, Bocelli in Italy. And sometimes as human beings, you might not be physically there in the moment where things are happening outside in the social world. But again, mindfully, you reset your mindset to imagine that I'm watching a concert and I'm in Italy, I'm watching the global citizenship in the US and I'm part of it. And I'm part of it in my mind because I'm enjoying the music, I'm enjoying the vibe. And that on its own creates a sense of belonging to something. You feel part of something, even if you are not physically there. It's social connectedness, like I say, it's good for better health, vitality, longevity, the sense of belonging and thriving in this lockdown situation, so that you know that there's trusted people around you. There's a stronger network. There's good fostered relationships that you can build to build the resilient competency. So I want to say to the person asking the question, it's reframing your mindset. So you are sitting at home at the moment, most of us, but you still have friends, you still have family, you still have the social things that you probably can't do physically now, but you can tune into you, to listen to your music, you can go to your iTunes to do the things that you love. And the mind is such a powerful thing that it actually takes you back to those places. I mean, one of the things that I've been craving at the moment is just to jump on a plane. I just want to jump on a plane and go somewhere. And in my world, I've looked at all the pictures of when I was just able to pack my suitcase and jump on a plane. But the irony of it, at the time where I actually had to go and jump on a plane, specifically and go to Spain, I was so grumpy about it. You can never understand. But now that it has come back and I don't have it and I can't do it to go to my favorite city, I'm creating all the beautiful memories that I had while I was there. And I'm socially connected to Spain because that's where I studied. That's where I made the best friends. That's where I used to walk on the streets. That's where I enjoyed the best food, you know. So you, in your mind, you create all these memories that take you back, which is part of the social connectedness that we're talking about.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. I think we can go ahead, continue with your slides. Those were the two questions that we've answered so far on this topic.
Okay. And my next slide talks about active constructive responding. Now, this one is it looks complex, but it's actually a very easy one. It talks about having meaningful conversations with people around you. And I'm going to repeat this. It talks about having mindful, meaningful, positive conversations with people around you. Now, bear in mind, we are living in a space where we are confined with our partners, with our children, with our caregivers, with our families. And whatever you say, especially for the children, they sponge everything. And this is a phenomenal way I'm saying, how many of us think mindfully before we respond? How many of us are thinking positively before we ask a question? And how many of us are thinking positively and mindfully before we speak? And if we responded to good and bad news shared by a person whom we love with interest, with a positive gesture, with positive emotions, even with a great facial expression or even an encouraging tone, can you imagine how that person feel? They feel a great sense of belonging just by you using active constructive responding of the way you speak, the way you respond, and the way you ask that question. So for me, I think there's a lot of things that I'm saying we can re-engineer, we can look into the past, we can do a lot of habit hacking by focusing on the things that we never probably had the time and the energy and the space to do right. And this is the space now that I'm calling lockdown positivity. Let's change, let's re-engineer, let's rebirth a new way of doing things. And through active constructive responding, we can mindfully increase our positivity in the relationships with others. I've mentioned that. And we can attract more positivity energy towards our own selves and have a great sense of satisfaction for both parties, with people and our own selves. And all these micro moments of responding constructively, you know, they demonstrate mutual understanding, validation, caring and sharing good news to the other person. Although it could be shared, you could be sharing something small, but it could mean something so big to somebody else. And it's just another mindful way of opening up a longer and a positive conversation with the other person. So it is quite important to pay particular attention to some of these things while we are at home, staying safe, saving lives, and being in a space where we spend a lot of time maybe in isolation with our own selves, in silence, mindfully meditation, praying. But we can practice some of these little things to get to a better space when we interact with the world, whenever that will be. And I'm going to go quickly through the SCAF model. The SCAF model basically talks about 5 things. It talks about the status of human beings. We all want to feel status, relative importance to others. It talks about certainty. Now, certainty at the moment, I think, is a word that doesn't exist to all of us. And I'm talking in a global view because the life at the moment we are living is very uncertain. No one can tell us what's going to happen tomorrow. No one can have 3 months of the life. And we are also talking about autonomy. Now, we are a species of wanting to be free. We want independence. We want to be free. We don't want to be locked down. We really don't want to be locked down. But we can use a way of a sense of control over events that we can't help. If we can't help being stuck, we can't help it. But let's use these moments positively. It talks about relatedness. We want to feel a sense of safety with others. And it talks about fairness. We want a perception of equitable exchange between people. And the SCAF model, for me, just summarizes everything that I think I'm talking about when I'm talking about the lockdown positivity in terms of status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And SCAF counts. It's just me saying SCAF counts. Read the model, look at the slides, Google it. It just counts if you follow it in that manner. And remember, one of the most important things as human beings, your actions and the decisions that we make, they either support or undermine perceived levels of status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness in your space. I think this one is more in particular in the workspace, in the corporates where we work, where status sometimes is everything, depending on what role you have, what grade you have, what salary you're in, what floor you are in, what office environment you are in, if you are in a closed office or you're in an open office. And it's just all these things that we just have to take a step back and just remember that the actions and the decisions either support or undermine the levels of the SCAF model. And I am going to now conclude. We are right in the end of my presentation, where I am leaving you with the parting words that let us make the most of this time in the lockdown. Let us rebuild ourselves. Let us re-engineer our businesses. Let us re-collaborate women-owned businesses and think differently. Let us rethink our thinking. Let us reframe our mindsets. Let us come up with innovative ideas of how we're going to do business moving forward, because the old ways of doing business are not going to sustain us post-lockdown. Let us nurture our relationships. Let us nurture our vitality and our well-being. And with those words, I want to say thank you very much. Hashtag lockdown positivity. It is not all lost. We can all do it. Just change that mindset. Just rethink your thinking. Just rebuild yourself. Just re-engineer the way that you are going to do business, women-owned businesses. Let us collaborate. Let us talk. The resources are available. I'm a phone call away. Jean is a phone call away. People are emails away. Let us just re-engineer our society for the better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jez. So much. We have a few more questions, I think, to go through in the remaining 8 minutes. of our time together. The one question is, what is the daily practice that you could suggest to help with mindfulness and using the strength approach and many of the key tools that you've shared with us today?
So if I can answer at a personal level from a mindfulness perspective, it all starts with you. And again, I'm going to go back to the self. What is it that you want for yourself? What kind of life you want to craft for yourself? What kind of spirit mode in terms of emotions do you want to be in? And having said that, I know some people are coming from a very low base of depression, of anxiety, of isolation, of suffering, of abuse. So this is not a pretty picture of saying, let's wake up and be happy chappies. It doesn't work like that. But step by step, from a mindfulness perspective, I, for example, listen to mindfulness meditation every morning on Calm and all sorts of other apps that are available for at least 7 minutes to 10 minutes. I close my eyes. I listen to my body. I listen to myself. I prescribe what kind of day I am going to have, because I've got control of what kind of day I'm going to have, irrespective of the circumstances around me. I exercise a lot. I run sometimes. Sometimes I do stomach exercises, depending on what I feel like that day. But I think it's all the self, what it is that you love. Do you love yoga? Do you love praying? Do you love meditation? Do you love music? What it is that makes you flourish. And I can prescribe what I do for myself, which I've just explained, which makes me flourish. I mean, sometimes I just walk around the garden, just to take a walk around the garden. And for me, that's healing, you know, that makes me feel part of nature, feel part of something. So I hope I've answered that. From a mindfulness perspective, it's not total silence.
Yes, you have.
Moment by moment, and listening to the way that you are breathing.
Okay, so there's one more question that I want to put in before we go. Is there a difference between being mindful about asking a mindful question and how you say something? So being mindful about asking a mindful question and how you actually ask that question, I think is what the question is asking.
So,
is there a difference?
There's definitely a very mindful way of asking questions. And I think we did touch on it on the active constructive slide, that the way that you ask or the way that you speak or the way that you engage mindfully or positively even is quite critical, because if you use a certain body language which is negative towards somebody, woe unto you, because you might receive it right back. But if you use the active constructive responding in having your mindful conversations, in asking questions, for example, using positive gestures, positive emotions, positive facial expressions, and very importantly, using an encouraging tone to make the other people feel good about themselves, I think the results will be much better than just you lashing out at somebody, asking a question which you think is mindful, but your tone is ugly, your emotions are negative, your expression is not the best expression, because you might just get it back to you. And then how are you going to deal with it? So to answer your question, I do encourage asking questions mindfully using active constructive responding, which is on my slides.
Okay. So we have 2 minutes. And I think there was just one last question. I don't know if you can answer a question in the last minute, or it basically says, is there a direct correlation between being clear of your boundaries and achieving that state of mindfulness? Is there a direct correlation between being clear of your boundaries and achieving the state of mindfulness?
I think that there is a possibility. Achieving a clear state of mindfulness. I mean, I used to argue a lot with my professors about this, to say, but how mindful can you be mindful? How practical is this? I mean, is this just science, or are we living a facade, or is this real? And what I can say to answer that question is that practice, practice, practice makes perfect. If we are coming from base zero, like I did when I didn't know anything about mindfulness, I knew that I'm a student, I'm open, I'm learning, it is what it is. I don't know much about this topic, but I'm highly interested in this topic. So I think you can have a little bit of a balance to say, is there mindfulness, or the other words that you use to say, for me, it's practice, practice, practice. And eventually we can all get there.
Well, thank you, Jess. There's been a lot of comments about how people are loving it, how insightful this was. So thank you for a really, really great and interesting 1 hour. Okay, bye everybody. Looks like everybody's already. Thank you so much. So till next time, we're coming back again. We're holding these every week. So we look forward to hearing from many more of you, and many more of you attending these sessions. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you, ladies. That was amazing. That was really great. Thank you very much. For those still on the call, we will share the slides, and we'll also share the recording. Just give us a few days to actually upload the recording. Thank you, Jazz. That was fantastic. Thank you very much. I think we need to be reminded constantly that we do need to be mindful. I have to say, I've now started making sure I stop for lunch, have lunch in the garden, sit in the sun, get my vitamin D in, and just pause, because often we don't pause enough times. And for my family, we've actually started, my family split between South Africa and the UK, and we now have Sunday evening calls. That's everybody, the grandparents, my siblings, and all the children, and you get to see everybody. So rather than just the WhatsApp messages, and I think you're right, we do need to make the most of this time. We really do need to make the most. So thank you, everyone. We're right on time. Jazz, all the best. Thank you for those amazing words.
But
Goodbye.
you were absolutely amazing, my sister.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And next week, we've got Kgobati speaking on leadership. So please join us for that webinar. We've sent out the invitation, and you'll be able to register for that during this week. Thanks, ladies. Thanks.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.